Pride is often referred to as one of the deadliest sins, and there's warnings against it throughout the entire Bible. You've probably heard of verses such as, "Pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble." Or, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace." Clearly, the warnings against pride are mentioned throughout the scriptures, and yet it's still something that everyone struggles with today and has been struggling with for thousands of years. So what should we do? How can we prevent ourselves from being prideful? Well, today, I'm going to teach you about the problems with pride, and make sure to stick around to the end of the video because later, I'm going to give you what I think is the easiest solution to get your ego in check. So the text I'm going to be using today to teach about pride is actually just one verse found in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. Now, when you look at the broader context of the Church of Corinth, these early Christians had many problems that they struggled with as they transitioned into Christianity. And one of these problems that they struggled with was pride. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul is warning the Church of Corinth and calling attention to their pride, saying that they were puffed up, which actually comes from a Greek word pronounced phusiao, which literally means to inflate with air, which is a figurative way to say that the Corinthians like to inflate their egos to appear bigger and better than everyone else. So understanding that, now let's take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7, where the Apostle Paul says this, "For who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not?" Let's break this verse down. This verse can actually be separated into 3 different questions, which I'm going to simplify this way. Question number 1, who makes you different from anyone else? Question number 2, is there anything you have that you didn't receive from God? And question number 3, if you received something from God, then why do you boast as if it came from yourself? Now let's go ahead and study each question. The answer to the first question is a bit complicated. Who makes you different from anyone else? The reality is that many things could make you different from someone else. Maybe you have more money than the person next to you. You may have been raised by both of your parents while your best friend never even met their father. Maybe you're short, tall, speak a different language. Whatever it is, the truth is that there are differences between all of us, and sometimes those differences make us better or worse at something than the person next to us. But the point of asking this question is to remind us that regardless of our differences, we're only different than someone else because God has made it so. It's not because of you that maybe you were raised by both your parents. You didn't do anything to choose your own height, skin color, or the country you were born in. All of those things happened because God allowed them to happen. So if God allowed these things to happen, then why should you brag about your height or your money or where you're from? You didn't do anything to contribute to that. God did. The other important thing to mention about this question is that even if there are differences between us in the material world, in the spiritual world, we're all treated the same. The Bible makes it clear that we're all equal in value. We were all created in the imago Dei, the image of God, and we were all given the same promise of salvation through Jesus Christ. So any differences that may make you seem better or more important than someone else actually don't. So the answer to the first question can be stated like this. Who makes you different or better than anyone else? Well, if there is something about you that makes you different, it's only because God made it so. And even if you are better at something or have more than someone else, in the end, it doesn't really matter because all of us are still equal in value and are offered the same grace and mercy regardless of who we are or where we're from. Now let's take a look at the second question. Is there anything you have that you didn't receive from God? The answer to this question is simply no. And there's proof of this throughout the Bible. You can take a look at Psalm 24:1, for example, where King David says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." It doesn't get much clearer than that, but if that's not enough for you, then you can also hear it from God himself in Exodus 19:5, where God tells Moses on Mount Sinai, "The whole earth is mine." Those 2 verses make it clear that all material things come from God. But it's not just the material, it's everything else too, which is why I personally prefer to read James chapter 1, verses 16 through 17, where James says this, "Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father." When James is saying every good and perfect gift, that implies that every single good thing about you, whether it's something physical, material, or even something like your talents and passions, all of those things come from God. So is there anything that you have that you didn't receive from God? The answer is clearly no. And speaking of receiving something, I would really appreciate it if I received your subscription to this YouTube channel. So please consider clicking the like and subscribe buttons to this video so that way you don't miss a word. Okay, so now let's look at the third question asked here in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7. If you receive something from God, then why do you boast as if it came from yourself? So every question in this verse builds up to this lesson right now. If everything you are and everything about you comes from God, then why would you boast about it? Every good thing about you and me comes from the Lord. You are not strong on your own. You are only strong because Christ makes you strong. And I am not talented on my own. I am only talented because Christ makes me talented. Because of this, there's no reason for you or me to brag about ourselves or about the good things that we have, because the only reason that we have anything is because Christ makes it so. You see, one of the main problems with pride is this. When you're prideful, arrogant, or cocky, you're always looking down at other people, occasionally admiring how great you are by placing yourself above others. But the problem with pride is when you're prideful, you're so busy looking down at other people that you'll never take the time to look up toward God. So the solution to pride is actually pretty simple. Just do the opposite. Stop looking down at other people and instead start looking up toward God. The thing is that when you start looking up toward God, you'll start to realize how small you are and start to recognize just how great He is. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm trying to say here. When I say not to have pride, I'm not saying not to be proud of the work that you do or proud of your kids or the progress that you might be making in life. No. There's a difference between living with pride and looking down at other people and being proud and happy for others and even with yourself, understanding that all of the good things and the accomplishments and the growth that you're experiencing, understanding that all of that actually comes from God's work in your life. We can experience great joy when we better ourselves and grow in our faith, being proud of the work that God is doing in our lives and the guidance that He is giving us. When we say that we're proud of other people or even proud of the work that we're doing, that's actually what we should mean. Not being proud because that work came from ourselves, but being proud of the fact that that is a manifestation of God's work in our lives. We should remember that everything we do and the success we experience and the good things that we have, all of that is really just God Himself pulling us closer toward Him and guiding us in the right direction. So I encourage you today to follow the words of the Apostle Paul, who says this a few chapters later in 1 Corinthians. Let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. If you are going to boast, then boast about God's righteousness. If you are going to brag, then brag about God's victory over evil and sin. And if you're going to admire anything about yourself, admire the fact that you are a product of God's creation. You are His, and every good and perfect gift that you have comes from the Lord. Amen. Hi everyone, and thanks for sticking around to the end. And if you found any value in this video at all, please consider clicking the like and subscribe button so that way you can keep up to date with all the work that we're doing here at What's the Word. Also, please consider sharing this video with others. Who knows, maybe it'll be a blessing to somebody that you know. Anyway, I appreciate all of you and I hope you have a wonderful week. God bless.